Good morning. I'm Frank Kaufmann. I've put together some thoughts this morning that I've entitled The Cure for Things Like 9/11. Today is the 11th of September, and by a curious coincidence, what I ended up reading this morning spoke precisely to this this day, this commemoration, this time of tragedy and time of heroism in American and international history. And so I'm reading along. I'm reading the people who I read, the ones who inspire me, and the ones from whom I try to learn and grow. And by absolute chance and coincidence, the one of the folks is speaking directly to the very matter of this day, in which haters of America and Western culture organized a very sophisticated plot to cause harm to American people and to stability in our country. I wish the U.S. had responded differently. In hindsight, I see the tragedy as a time of opportunity for greater solidarity that was lost. And I pray that we learn lessons and grow and get better. But so strangely, from what I was reading this morning, the two things that harmonize or combined to speak directly to things like this, like the 9/11 tragedy, happen to be the teaching and writing and speaking of a father and a son on entirely separate occasions, something like 30 years apart or something like that. But anyway, so the first one I'm reading is from way back in the 80s, and this part is not directly apropos to 9/11 per se, although of course it is, especially as it flows together in the thoughts that struck me as a unified whole. But the speaker says, "Has there ever been a saint in history who said, 'Follow my example, because as a representative of all people in history, my mind and my body have ceased to fight and have achieved complete unity?'" Next goes on to say, "Which is more important, the body or the mind? Both mind and body are important. But what is even more important is the unity of my body and mind. This is very important. If you have not achieved this, even though the world may be unified, you will have nothing to do with that world." So this sounds like a simple string of words, but in fact, it covers a myriad of extremely important matters, just one after another, tightly woven, that are so easily missed. And I'd like to just focus on these for 20-30 minutes and just unpack them, but I'm in the middle of presenting a weave with the next thing I read from the fellow's own son, speaking 30 years later. But okay, first of all, the speaker is talking about the history of spiritual and religious intervention in human affairs, which is always carried through a particular individual. We call them saints. We might call them Messiah, Avatar. There's millions of names and there's millions of levels. But basically, he's introducing the history of every single occasion in which, quote unquote, God or heaven or the design for peace and happiness, however we're going to kind of designate the title for this all, for this one, for the good, whatever. It says it always comes into human affairs through an individual of exceptional quality, of exceptional spirituality or exceptional morality, exceptional courage, some virtue that embodies itself in an individual that is so grand that it fundamentally changes the course of human history. So the speakers, the context of his question is the entire run of history. So you have creatures, you have figures like Moses, like Buddha, like Rachel, like Teresa of Avila, like the Prophet Muhammad, and on and on. Has there ever been a saint in history who said, follow my example, that they all do that, all prophets and founders? Because as a representative of all people in human history, I don't know if I find this. I've studied all religions. I teach all the world's religions. Has there ever been a saintly figure who said, follow my example? Because as a representative of all people in history, it's an interesting question. I don't know. Have not been struck by, as I read the sacred texts, of any founder that identifies himself or herself as representative of all people in human history. Jesus comes a little bit close to that because the Christian scriptures and some forms of Christian orthodoxy understand him to be from before the beginning, to have existed from before the creation. So in a certain way, then you'd have to say that figure is representative of all people in history. But then the main question is, follow my example, because my mind and body have ceased to fight and have achieved complete unity. I think more of the Buddha when I think of that particular aspiration or something held up as grand. So possibly there have been religious founders and saints who do say that, who have achieved complete unity. Then the next paragraph says, which is more important, the body or the mind? That's a classical battle, especially in contemporary times. And those who have an impulse towards spirituality or morality, or they say, no, our soul is more important, our spirit is more important, our moral fortitude, those invisible things, those qualities of compassion, of goodness, of sacrifice, these are more important. And then the secular, I don't know how sophisticated, there is some sophisticated defense of the body, but generally speaking, your average everyday secular person is focused on the body. No, which is more important? No, the body's more important. You have to eat, you have to have a house, you have to wear your clothes, you can't starve to death, you can't freeze to death. And I'd rather have a boat, I'd rather have lobster. I work to get rich. I have a goal that by 30 I'll have X, by 40 I'll have X. My house will be bigger until I'm 50. My children will move out. I'll buy them. It's like entirely the world of the body. It's entirely the physical world that dominates virtually all people passing through the world today. Even spiritual and religious people have a very hard time not succumbing to or surrendering to the physical demands. Not that they have to be hedonists or they have to be greedy, but they live in the constant worry of, when I get old, will I be sick? Will I have insurance? And so on and so forth. So there is a perennial battle between which is more important, the mind or the body. This figure, this teacher, says both the mind or body are important. Already that's a statement. Already that is, whoa. That you don't hear from a person absolutely committed to guiding life so that it is secure for eternity. They're both important. It doesn't raise up either one to any higher degree at all. An extremely balanced and insightful beginning point for guiding, not spiritual life, for guiding life. Guiding life. They're both important, but it was what is even more important is the unity of my body and my mind. This is very important. If you haven't achieved this, even if the world is one, you'll have nothing to do with it. So then kind of just steps over or declares this eternal clash between oh, don't be so materialistic, and no, you should be religious or prayerful. Just steps over that and like diminishes that eternal clash in a single moment. They're both important. There you have it. Argument finished. But what's more important is the unity of the body and mind. So he's created an entirely separate category that is a new point of focus, and which is clearly defines the value of life. The value of life. When my mind and body are one, then I have peace. I am not at war with myself. I'm not in a struggle. I'm flowing well. The symbol of mind-body unity are the great athletes, the great performers, the great musicians, the great guitarists, the great pole vaulters, the great 100-yard dash, the guy with ice running through his veins, putting for on the 18th for the green jacket. This is the symbol of mind-body unity. But the true mind-body unity is the person whose entire life reflects that harmony that we adore and admire while watching the fleeting occasions of it in simple athletic or musical or artistic command. But when it means that I'm like that when I wake up in the morning, I'm like that when I talk to my wife, I'm like that when I'm sitting in my class, I'm like that when someone gets onto the subway beside me. When like that putt or like that note, like that symphony is the nature of my life, that's what's described as the pursuit of mind-body unity. And then finally the most fascinating thing, or not most fascinating, but in keeping with moving us forward to a far more profound horizon than the classical, old-fashioned religious clashes of don't be greedy, don't be physical, don't be material, focus on God. So just kind of harmonizes that all the way through, gives a clear point of focus now we can really work on having balance and quality in our life, respect in our life, be fine in every imaginable way. Then says, even if the world were unified, if I myself don't have harmony in my unity, mind-body unity, then even if the world were unified, I have nothing to do with that. And so finally brings us to the final horizon of the world in which we live, the society in which we live. Everybody is full, especially these days, full of commentary. Oh, it should be like this. Oh, they're like this. Oh, IBM did that. Oh, Facebook did that. Oh, the president did that. Oh, our governor did that. Or why didn't they make us wear masks? Back in 1943. And everybody's just full of what the world should be like. Who knows? Maybe your opinion. Maybe you do know how to save the world. That's it. That's not even my point. But this teaching or this sentence says, even if it were perfect, if we don't have perfect harmony between mind and body, we won't even have anything to do with any. We'll be at odds with it. We'll be inconsistent with it. We'll have no joy. We'll just be in a constant state of personal struggle. We'll intend things, don't do them. We'll have dishonesty about ourselves and so forth if we don't have that unity. And so here we move from the most innermost self all the way to the outermost reality, the world itself, and it's entirely resting on the question of mind and body. It's not just about spiritual life, and it's not even just about me becoming something good or bad. Because even if the world is the point, and that brings me to the second bit of reading that I stumbled across, and this is the part that has to do with 9/11. So now we have the father, the guy who I read, talking about what kind of person I need to be, or you or we need to, what kind of individual I need to be, in order to have anything to do with not even a good world, with good, when goodness is going on around me. There can be goodness going on around me that if I'm not in my mind and body are not in a unity, in harmony, then I'm unrelated to any goodness going on around me, even if it's not the entire world. Then this 30 years later, there's another guy speaking, talking to a bunch of people on matters of life concern, and says, you say you want to bring this nation, who happen to be speaking in America, from selfishness to unselfishness, right? Okay, I think that primarily underlies anybody's claim about anything. If it's the Me Too movement, there's the most grotesque and hideous form of selfishness is the willingness to exploit power and to invade the sacred privacy of a person's sexual integrity. There's nothing worse. There's no greater form of selfishness. Period. And so, or you take the Black Lives Matter, or I don't even like to use that particular term because it describes a particular organization, but take the genuine issue of racial inequity. There again, it has to do with selfishness and unselfishness. Ultimately, those things that need repair in the United States have to do with selfishness and unselfishness. So this guy's talking to his little group, talking to us, and says, so you say you want to bring this nation from selfishness to unselfishness, right? And the answer is yes, no matter what your cause is, no matter who you're voting for, no matter how you're viewing the ills and troubles of our country or of the world, that is where the issue lies. Right? Well, how are you going to go about achieving that? How is that actually doable? How can we actually do that in our lives and in our country? So if you are like any of us these days, just drowned in the constant chatter of self-righteous people blabbing away about what's right and what's wrong, and boil it down. Hello, Mr. Newscaster, in all of your coiffed and sprayed hair and makeup. Are you basically telling me you're so great because you believe America should be a better country, that it should move from selfishness so that there won't be racism, there won't be gender inequality, there won't be the abuse of the poor in the inner cities? Is that your point? Are we moving from selfishness to unselfishness? Is that what you're so proud of yourself about? Okay, yes, okay, we're on the same page. Then this particular speaker, my buddy here and my friend and teacher, says, well, how are you going to go about achieving that? How is that actually doable? How can we even accomplish such a thing in our lives? So suddenly he brings the matter of not just opening the newspaper or listening to some self-important guy on the news, but asking, he says, we can try, but we have to have some form of direction and basic strategy. So suddenly it's serious. If this is your big cause, whatever our cause, whatever it might be, and they're all legitimate, the environment, or if there's any abuse of the environment, that's also the fruits of selfishness. The issue is selfishness to unselfishness. And this speaker says, what's your strategy? And so he's asking, are you at work on it or not? And if you are at work on it, then in what precise way do you imagine this, imagine this is to be realized? Good question. Are we at work on it? He demands of us, are you at work on it? If so, what's your strategy? He posits the following. I feel the best strategy is to put greater emphasis on family. Start with things that everybody can relate to. So family is held universally across the board. You can have a Hollywood starlet or star or old lecher or whatever who's been married 43 times, and he'll get on, he'll be in the interview on TMZ or whatever, shedding a tear about my daughter, I'll do anything for my daughter. I gave up my role in the film and gave up these millions of dollars because I had to rush home to be with my daughter, this newborn one. I'm so proud. And the family pervades everybody of every sort. No matter how intensely people try to redefine family, they define it back as the core and essential place of the highest space of my personal commitment. So this particular friend of mine who's teaching, he goes, so how do you intend to convert America from selfishness to unselfishness? He goes, I believe that put the greater emphasis on family. Start with something everybody can relate to. I'm reading now, hear him again. There's a tremendous threat out there. If you have a family, your children are under threat. Whether kids open up the internet or literally open the door and walk outside, there's a tremendous threat. Why? Because there is no absolute value put on the family. You do have absolute value given to individual rights, individual existence to a point, I guess, but there is no absolute value given to the family. That's how we can restore democracy. When we can bring that absolute standard so that society accepts it and actually starts to implement it, start practically according to law and move to absolute value of the family, then we will start to see things change. That way, we leave no room for those crazy people who use God's name to blow you up. All right. So in this particular individual, the son, speaking 30 years later, is wondering how, if you're calling yourself good, if you're calling yourself caring, if you're invested in something that you want to improve, how do you go about doing it? He posits that the rights of the individual ultimately, if this absolute baseline of what free society guarantees, the rights of the individual, if that very quality of absoluteness could embed itself in the consciousness of the nation, in the texture of the society, in the assumptions, and even beginning in the legals, in the law, that the same absolute baseline of rights, God-given rights, is shifted toward the family, then we have the beginning of guarantees that wherein both internally and the externals of law, of social order, of social aspiration, of legislation, of organizations trying to guarantee rights and create opportunities, if the family is the baseline, then that barrier, that bridge, that transition point has moved into what can genuinely become the beginning point of having the capacity to change a nation from selfishness to unselfishness. That small thin thread from the absolute rights that we presume guarantee the individual, if that could begin to settle itself into the consciousness of the absolute rights for the family, then the modification of the human capacity for selfishness would become greatly modified, and laws and opportunities and the construction of our national basis also would begin to change in fundamental ways. So thanks a lot. That was my offering for 9/11. The concluding line of my friend's commentary as he spoke to his hearers, to the people who wanted to learn from him. He goes, that way, we leave no room for crazy people who use God's name to blow you up. It's not possible. It's not possible under such circumstances. And there's no way to define one's own cause, or one's own faith, or one's own God, or one's own responsibility that would ever include acts of violence against innocence and against tradition. Thanks. Talk to you again soon.